once again for another Big 12 preview. But one of my favorite movies of all time is Braveheart. And there's this scene in the movie where the English cavalry is charging at the Scots, and William Wallace is holding his arm up and the sword up, and he's just yelling, "Hold! Hold!" And I feel like that is right where we are at the start of college football season. We are getting so dangerously close. The cavalry is coming. The onslaught of college football is coming. Week 0 is less than a week away. So, John, we are just holding that line just a little longer here, and we will be right in the heart of football season.
Man, you should have warned me. I could have busted out the face paint for that. And now I'm all jacked up.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to get your natural reaction there. I didn't want any props or anything that just seemed too contrived. But I love it. I love that movie. I was just watching the clip, getting ready to go here, heading into this show. But we're going to keep talking about the Big 12, and the Big 12 basically is just like a full war, and it kind of feels like they're almost like in medieval times because they're just a couple notches down from the big boys in college football. So I think the reference really holds true here when we're going to preview the Big 12.
It does. Like we were talking about in part one, they are just all over the top of the returning production, metrics. Like, the SEC and the Big Ten, a lot of their, best programs from those respective conferences, they're doing like these kind of wholesale changes as far as their personnel goes. So much continuity in the Big 12, which is, exciting. You kind of get some names that you can get attached to year over year, and we get that with the Big 12 here, and I'm excited to talk about this next batch of teams that we didn't hit in part one.
So we hit a lot of the big boys, really, in that first part with the exclusion of Kansas State and Iowa State, who we're going to talk about today. But if you missed any of that, go check out our podcast feed or our YouTube page at College Football Tailgate. Hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot. But we had some great insights there as we really started to dive into this conference the other day. We're going to continue doing that today. We got to talk about Kansas State and Iowa State, who are going to meet in Ireland in less than a week's time now, we record this on Sunday, August 17th. We got to talk about the Kansas Jayhawks, who I believe, John, you said that's your dark horse, right, in this conference? We got to hit on them.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yep. We got to hit on BYU, Colorado, Dion the first year with no Shadur or Travis Hunter, so that team's going to look wildly different. And we'll hit on some of the other teams towards the bottom of the odds board when it comes to this conference. But speaking of the odds board, I think that's a good place to start here, John, because there has been a little bit of movement since we last spoke. Let me pull up the Big 12 here on FanDuel, so hopefully everybody that's watching can see. We now have a 4-way tie when it comes to the favorite in this conference on FanDuel. Kansas State, Utah, Texas Tech, and ASU, the defending champ, all sitting there at plus 550. Baylor a notch below at 650, and then TCU at plus 850. So, John, what are your thoughts here? Have you changed your mind at all as we head into this conference? As we now, it really still feels that it's just like the odds makers and the books are just throwing their hands up and be like, here, you guys, go ahead, take your swing.
Yeah, the more that I've looked at the Big 12 in recent days, getting prepped for these episodes, it's like the less I feel confident, in like any one of my takes about particularly this top tier. Like, this is a conference where I don't think we're going to see a repeat of last year, where Arizona, the consensus last place team ends up winning it. I don't think that UCF has that in them this year in year 0 under Scott Frost, but it really could get pretty crazy here. And I think at least you're getting decent prices, if you want to bet the quote unquote favorites here. But I think you're getting some decent value down the board, and I think that they do have legitimate chances at winning the conference. Like, I think that there's really like 8 teams that I could realistically see winning it, whereas you look at the Big Ten or the SEC and it's like 3, maybe 4 teams. So the wide open nature of it is absolutely reflected in these odds here, and I think that there's like teams I do like from this opening cluster there at plus 550. I think if I had to make a bet, it would be Utah. And I think if I had to fade one hard, it's probably Texas Tech.
Yeah, so it's funny. You mentioned how when we're going through and doing our prep and taking notes about each of these teams, it's like literally like you turn the page in one of these season preview mags, or you scroll down a column or something, like, ooh, I like this team too, and ooh, I like this about that team, and ooh, I like this one. Like you're James Woods and Family Guy going, ooh, a piece of candy. Like I can find something about every single team here just about that I like, that I'm like, oh, okay, this wouldn't totally surprise me if this team like gets hot and goes on a run.
No, exactly. I mean, it goes down to every team that you see on the screen here. I think has a legit, like, you can talk yourself pretty easily into a path where they get it done. Although obviously in part one I was rather harsh on Baylor.
Oh, it happens. You got to be harsh on someone. You can't like everything. So I know ESPN put out their FPI that a lot of people I think are mocking on the internet these days, as that has come out this weekend. S&P Plus has changed and updated a little bit as we get closer here. Anything that you really want to touch on before we start diving into these teams?
So it's just like an important thing to monitor, and luckily we had like the past data available to us as well, so we can kind of see what the new rankings mean as far as like the changes in the computer's opinion on these teams. Utah, they seem to like, FPI is much cooler on Utah than I think the consensus college football intelligentsia, and certainly SP Plus. FPI has Utah at 45. SP Plus has them at 26, so pretty significant difference of opinion there. And I think there's also, you can kind of pick and choose what you choose to be like, oh, no, they're right on this, or, oh, they're way off. I like FPI's opinion on Kansas. They have them at 26. They also have BYU up at 22, which is quite a statement, given that Jake Retzlaff no longer with the program. He's down at Tulane. He was such a big difference maker for them a year ago. So we'll have to see what the computer really is liking from this BYU team as to why it could be a top 25 type of contender.
Yeah, I think, we're going to get into BYU in a little bit here, but I wonder how much just like opening months of like the schedule play into this, if at all, when it comes to these computers, if they're like trying to forecast a little bit, because some of these teams do have some very soft openings where they could get rolling. And I do think BYU is one of those teams, and we'll get to them, even though BYU's offense is just like, I don't know who is playing, where are they, where have they come from? There's a ton of change there going on in Provo.
Yes, there is. There's another Bachmeier that we'll be talking about, folks. So we're not just done with Hank. We got more.
Yeah, we got two more. The Bachmeier trio is going to be there at BYU. We'll get to them in a minute. So let's start off. Let's talk about Kansas State, who is one of the four co-favorites here in this conference, sitting at plus 550. Your win total for the Wildcats is at 8.5. We have a minus 106 on FanDuel for the overs, your best price. The under at minus 114. Bill Connolly on ESPN notes this is the 14th most returning production in the country heading into this season, but only 9 starters, which I find kind of interesting. This team did hit the portal pretty hard. Kleiman went out there and got some guys, especially on the offensive line. 4 out of the 5 projected starters are transfers. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. This team, John, also, they faded late in the season last year. They lost 3 out of their last 4 and fell out of the Big 12 race. Avery Johnson's back. You kind of started talking about him towards the end of our part 1 show, that we just need this kid to be more consistent if this team is going to live up to their potential and threaten for a Big 12 championship. What do you make of the Wildcats? I think this week 0 matchup is fascinating, but let's save our specific thoughts on that for the end when we really talk about this game in week 0. But what do you think about Kansas State heading into this season?
Well, there's reasons to think that they can kind of run the similar script that they did a year ago, and when it works really well. Avery Johnson is, he's a guy that can have pretty devastating effects on the defense with his rushing ability. They lose DJ Giddens, but Dylan Edwards, I think, is someone that everyone can kind of easily forecast, slipping into the Giddens role and really thriving in it. I think Kansas State is just kind of an offense that can kind of print rushing yards that way. And, when defenses are worried about Avery Johnson, then, that kind of helps things out, keeps the defense on the heels, and Dylan Edwards can just kind of hammer away. expect it to be kind of like another like low passing volume offense. I tried to like find anything I could to really find some positives when it came to Avery Johnson's passing game sample from last year. Tough to find. I mean, we're talking about a guy that completes less than 60% of his passes. That immediately, kind of raises a huge red flag to me. 15 for 30 against Rutgers in the bowl game. Like, give me a break. Like, I don't care how much you can run the ball. If you can't hit the broadside of the barn against Rutgers, I have legit concerns about you. And against Iowa State last year, struggled pretty mightily. There were several games in the conference sample where he did not do particularly well. Just a 7.3 yards per attempt sample for him against Big 12 opponents. So it's going to be predicated on whether he can kind of take a step forward with the accuracy. I think that there's guys around him that can kind of help that development. Jace Brown, I think, is someone who's kind of a stud at receiver. Garrett Oakley, I think people are excited about. People are always excited about a K-State tight end. And they also, I believe, brought in their first ever 5-star recruit at the tight end position in Lincoln Cure, who's a freshman, and I think there's reasons to be excited about him as well. So it all, it's long way of saying it all comes down to the quarterback, but that is absolutely the case with Kansas State, because if Avery Johnson is able to do what his biggest proponents think he can, this is a monster season for K-State. But if he falls flat yet again, we're going to have another disappointing year there in the Little Apple.
Yeah, it's really interesting as you look at it. I mean, K-State only had one guy last year with more than 30 catches, which that's not great. But luckily for them, that one guy was Jace Brown, who is returning, as you were just talking about. I find Dylan Edwards to be really intriguing this year. I mean, he averaged over 7 yards per carry last season as the backup, but he never had more than 8 attempts in a game until that bowl game against Rutgers, where he ran for 196 yards. So once this kid gets the ball, he can do things with it. Going to be interesting. I know you have your questions about Johnson. I think the offensive line is the biggest question with this team. When you got 4 transfers coming in to start, and that could just really just amplify your concern with Johnson too, if he's got a lackluster O-line in front of them. But K-State they have won at least 9 games in 3 straight seasons. They've won at least 8 games in 4 straight. When it comes to this 8.5 though, I'm kind of leaning towards the under. Let me make sure I can pull up their schedule for everybody here. But they have some really tough games as we look at this. So let's pull up K-State's schedule. You got that opener in Ireland, Farmageddon against Iowa State. That's never an easy game. They have to go to Baylor this year. To Kansas could be tough. At Utah towards the end of the year. They have to go at Oklahoma State, which I know the Pokes were terrible last year, and they have a ton of question marks heading into this season as Mike Gundy has completely revamped that entire program. But historically, that has been a brutal spot for them. They're 1-8 in their last 9 trips to Stillwater. So there are some big-time slip-up spots where if Johnson and that offensive line are not rolling, I can see this team losing 4 games, and therefore I'd be more comfortable playing that under than I would the over. But how do you feel?
I got one more for you here. So look there early in the season that you play Army on September 6th. 6 days later, you have to go on the road to Arizona. Teams just tend to struggle after playing a triple option opponent. It's a thing, and then you add the short week with a road dynamic to it. Suddenly, whatever the number is that they end up hanging for K-State Arizona, I'm gonna think that the tailwinds are kind of helping Arizona, and that's in that particular game. I will probably we'll check back in on this in September, but I could see myself definitely siding relatively hard with Arizona there, depending on what that number ultimately is, because it's just tough for a defense to bounce right back after playing a triple option team.
So a little interesting nugget too about that game. 2 interesting nuggets. That game at Arizona actually is not going to count as a conference game. This was scheduled before.
Oh, fun.
Arizona joined the Big 12. So therefore, the Big 12 has done this the past couple of years because they're still trying to work out those scheduling kinks. But another note here, Kansas State has been outright upset in 3 straight road openers under Chris Kleiman. So that is another intriguing spot. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like trends are your friends until they're not. That's something I'm going to say a ton this year. But that just adds more ammo, I think, to your point. That's going to be a really tricky spot. I'm going under 8.5 with K-State. I don't buy into them as much as I buy into some of the other teams at the top of that Big 12 list.
I'm riding with you on this one. Kind of like you said just a few minutes ago. It's like it's easy to like things about every one of these teams, particularly at the top, but you got to poke holes eventually. And I think it became easier with the added microscope to see where Kansas State's potential pitfalls are. So I like them to win 8 games, not 9.
So Iowa State has had a football program for 133 years, John. Last year was the first time that they have won 10 games in a season. Matt Campbell leads his squad coming into 2025. They are one of the co-favorites up there. Or no, they're like a little bit below when it comes to everybody else in the Big 12. But I don't think this team should be taken lightly. They return a good amount of production. Outside of those 2 stud wide receivers that are both going to be playing in the NFL this season, Rocco Becht is back. They return their running game. A lot of pieces on the line, too. Iowa State comes in here at a 7.5 with their win total, plus money to the over, plus 116. The under's kind of juiced. I just really like Matt Campbell and everything he's doing up there in Ames. So, I kind of want to take the over, just blindly looking at this and trusting Matt Campbell to get this team going and have them continue to build on the success that he's had up there. If this team can find some playmakers on offense, I do think Beck can get them the ball, and I do think they'll be a very tough out in the Big 12 this season.
I'm with you here. Campbell is, kind of. It felt like he was when they beat Oklahoma, like, oh my God, almost a decade ago. He was kind of anointed as like the next guy, right? Like the next guy that's going to move up to one of these like blue blood programs, and he's kind of just stuck it out at Iowa State and kind of ridden different waves of being hypey or being just kind of like Iowa State just kind of goes back into anonymity a little bit, especially after Brock Purdy left and Breece Hall left. People kind of stopped paying attention to this team. But Beck kind of has them back rolling. It is a problem, of course, that you lose Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. But I think there's reason to believe that, with his experience within this offense, Beck I'm talking about, that he can elevate guys like Chase Soule and Xavier Townsend and kind of get similar production that they were able to a year ago. They're going to need to run the ball better this year than they did last year, so that is something that I'm keeping an eye on with this team and kind of what its ceiling ultimately is. But really nice floor here. I think that 8 wins is definitely doable.
Yeah, so you mentioned the running game needs to take another step. Luckily for them, they returned 4 starters on the offensive line. They returned their top 2 rushers from a year ago. And I think with I'm expecting the wide receiver room to downgrade this year, it might be more of a focus for them to really get after that. Another interesting angle and aspect when it comes to Iowa State, Matt Campbell thinks he has the best tight end room in the country. I saw that as a quote here. Phil Steele has been writing about this in one of his preview mags. But yeah, he loves this Gabe Burkle kid, who's their tight end. He had 26 catches a year ago for just under 300 yards. But he's just a junior, so he could take a big step forward too. Some really interesting things here when it comes to the Cyclones. I'll pull up their schedule for us. I think this schedule sets up really nicely too, where if you want to try to go and take that over. So that's Kansas State's. Let's pull up Iowa's, right? So we got that neutral site game in Ireland that we've been talking about a little bit. That starts things off. Obviously, we got the Cy-Hawk Trophy battle there coming up against Iowa. That game's at home this season. But what you notice, John, when we get into this conference schedule, no Utah, no Baylor, no Texas Tech. Arizona State has to make the trip to Ames. As we mentioned, Kansas State's a neutral site. I can find 8 wins here. I don't know about you.
I think we might be looking at K-State still on the schedule front, but the Nuggets that you dropped there certainly still salient.
Let me pull that up.
All good. Nonetheless, I do feel like that this is a schedule that sets up pretty favorably for Iowa State to kind of go back to back and have another strong season. We're kind of like pitting 2 of my faves against each other with the Iowa State game. I do
always
kind of right, and I was really gassing up Iowa, so I'm probably gonna say that that's a loss for the Cyclones. But beyond that, I think that this is a schedule that sets up really nicely for them. You could see them with the finishing flourish at the end of the year, where they could go 4-1 or 5-0 in those last 5 games, and we're feeling pretty good about where we are relative to the total.
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate what I was saying before there. So now that I actually have Iowa State's schedule up on the screen, we're experimenting with some new software as we record this. But anyways, as I mentioned, neutral site against Kansas State. Arizona State has to make the trip to Ames this season. And then there's no Utah, no Texas Tech, and no Baylor here on this schedule for the Cyclones. So I really like that over 7.5 at plus money.
There we go. Let's ride.
All right, very good. Let's move on and let's talk about the team that, if you watched or listened to our last show, John called them the dark horse in the Big 12, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. 6.5 is their win total for KU this season, heavily juiced to the over at -160. I saw DraftKings they threw out a 7.5 there for what seems like a hot minute. They have since pulled that back down to 6.5. So John, it feels like a lot of people are agreeing with you. I'll let you set this one up since you are big on Kansas this season.
I am big on Kansas. It stinks that they lose Devin Neal, but I think Daniel Highshaw is someone to really keep an eye on this year. I don't want to misspeak, but I feel like he's someone that's been on the Bruce Feldman freaks list. But before Jalen Daniels coming back for yet another season there at quarterback, we all know that availability is the best ability. Daniels has kind of had an incomplete grade as far as that is concerned. But if you can tell me that Jalen Daniels is playing all 12 games this year, we're crossing the over on this one by early November, in my opinion. So I like this Kansas team. They brought in this kid, Emmanuel Henderson at receiver, that I think can be a playmaker that they've been really kind of missing in the passing game to kind of pair up with Jalen Daniels. So give him some guys to work with in the passing game, and I think that he can kind of elevate his game even further. We'll have to see what the defense holds for them. But, again, it's a team that the computers are split on. SP Plus just has Kansas at 48. FPI has them at 26. So the reality is probably somewhere in the middle, but I tend to be optimistic about this Jayhawks team. Rock chalk.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to, and I think the questions that the computers have is the same questions that we have and that you were just hinting at. What do we expect from Dr. Jalen Daniels this year? The kid's in his 10th year in school. He was second team all-conference in the Big 12 in 2022. That's a long time ago that this guy had a monster season. But yeah, as you mentioned, if he's healthy, this team should be good. They're going to be back home playing in Memorial Stadium for the first time in a while. They have a Week 0 game too, guys, by the way. They play Fresno State next weekend, so that's going to be interesting. I totally agree with you that the loss of Devin Neal is going to loom large for this team because he was their home run hitter a year ago, so they're going to have to find someone new to do that for him to be able to really take advantage of defenses, but it might just be Daniels from the quarterback position. One thing of note, John, that I do find about this team that maybe this will play into just some positive regression or reverse luck or something like that. They were 1-5 in one-score games a year ago. So this team wasn't in a lot of close games. They just couldn't quite get the job done. We know Kansas can score. It's just are they going to be able to get stops too? I think is a big question with them.
Yeah, that's huge. Did they lose to UNLV or something last year? They had some games where you're like, oh, you can't be doing that. And I think it was after that game that Matthew Sluka was like, F you, pay me UNLV, and then just sat out the rest of the season, left the team. What a crazy little side note from last season. That was that Kansas is tangentially related to, but they got to clean it up in one-score games. But like you said, oftentimes that can kind of plexiglass the other way, and get some good luck in those close ones, those coin flip games, and all of a sudden we're feeling good about getting over this 6.5 number.
The 2024 Jayhawks really are an interesting case study if you look at their schedule. Yes, they went 1-5 in one-score games, as we were just talking about, but they also had this stretch in November where they knocked off ranked opponents Iowa State, at BYU, and Colorado at 3 straight weeks. They barely lost the Sunflower Bowl or whatever they call that game against Kansas State there. They lost to them by 2 points. This team, they're a fun watch, I think is the only way I can put that, and that they're a team that you can feel comfortable, I feel like, taking points with if you're getting them, because they're going to just hang around and they don't just go away.
No, they do not. This is great stuff for a program that a few years ago, when they were in a close game against Oklahoma, they were like, if you're in Lawrence, come hang out at the stadium, please. No one's here.
Right.
We're almost beating Caleb Williams. Come get over here.
That's right. Didn't they put out like an alert like in midway through the game because like there was no one there?
I'm not even kidding. That's exactly what happened. It was just a Saturday in October in 2021. They're like, all of a sudden Kansas is really hanging around with an Oklahoma team that was really gunning for college football playoff type of season, and they didn't end up winning that game. Kansas didn't, but program has come a long way since then to where we're spending 5 minutes talking about their football team now.
Yeah, definitely. Lance Leipold doing big things. So let's quickly take a look at their schedule. 6.5 is that win total, heavily juiced to the over, and I think you can see why here. This is another one where they got that 1-2 punch. Fresno State, Wagner, where they can get this thing going in the right direction, maybe pick up some momentum before they have to go to Missouri, which will be an interesting game there in week 3. But you got West Virginia at home, Cincinnati. At UCF, I think, is a very winnable game for them before you really get into the meat of this schedule in the back half, John. And like you were talking about, if Jalen Daniels is rolling here, you should be able to just about have this ticket like in your pocket, like cashed, like midway through the season.
I'm feeling good about it. That ending stretch is no joke, though. I mean, K-State, Iowa State, and Utah in like the last 5 games, and Texas Tech in there as well in Lubbock. Those are tricky, no doubt about it. We're going to see a lot of points in that Texas Tech game. That's going to be bananas. But I'm feeling good about Kansas finding 7 at the very least here.
Solid, and they are also 15-1 to win the Big 12. In that, that next tier down when it comes to your odds board right now. Let's take another step down on the odds board, and that's BYU. We were talking about them a little bit at the start of the show. They're 22-1 to win the Big 12. Their win total also sitting at 6.5. Juicy to the over, minus 125 on DraftKings, plus 110 to the under on FanDuel. This team, John, last year, they start off 9-0 before they just dropped the ball and lost to Kansas by 4 points at home in November. The quarterback position is just... it's still a gigantic question mark. I feel like a lot of this team is a gigantic question mark at this time, as this team is truly bringing it down to the wire in fall camp when we're going to figure out who's playing and whatnot. But it sounds like as of today, Sunday, August 17th, Bear Bachmeier is going to be the starting quarterback as a true freshman. He's going to have the opportunity to throw to his older brother, Tiger Bachmeier. So you have Bear Bachmeier and Tiger Bachmeier, not making these names up. They are both the younger siblings of Hank Bachmeier, who threw for over 11,000 yards in 3 stops at Louisiana Tech, Boise State, Wake Forest, and so on. But true freshman at quarterback, he does return 3 of his top 4 pass catch, or they do return 3 of their top 4 receivers from a year ago. You bring in Bachmeier from Stanford. This is another team where when I'll pull up their schedule in a minute, they're going to have some time to figure things out. So it's interesting, and I don't really know what to make of BYU this season.
Yeah, I think anyone who says that they know exactly how this is going to go is full of it. I just don't know how you can remove a guy like Jake Retzlaff from the equation, plug in a true freshman quarterback, no matter how good the hype is on this kid, and feel strongly that things continue business as usual there in Provo. So I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that's why we see the 6.5 number be what it is after the season that they had a year ago. Some serious kind of expected regression here, and I'm buying it. I think that 6-6 is definitely within the realm of possibility. It's just you're asking so much for if Retzlaff had left under normal circumstances, end of the season last year, he goes to the NFL draft or something, they have a full offseason to prepare. Maybe we're singing a different tune about hey, this Bachmeier, he's gone through spring practice, he's gotten the requisite reps as the one, everything like that. Maybe you feel a little bit better about it, but boy, it feels like he's just kind of getting thrown into the fire a bit too much for my liking. So even though some of the computer rankings say that you should believe in what this BYU team is putting out there this year, I'm staying away from it.
Yeah, so like I said, a lot of question marks. There's the quarterback situation, a lot of turnover on the defensive side of the ball. Did you know BYU has not had a 1,000-yard rusher since Tyler Algier in 2021? So they haven't really been able to run the ball all that well the past few seasons. But with all those question marks, they are going to have some time to figure things out and kind of get the ball rolling here in the right direction if they can. Let's look at their schedule, John. You got that opener against Portland State. Then you play Stanford at home as well. They do have to go across the country to play East Carolina, at Colorado, West Virginia, Arizona's in there as well. The first half of this schedule does set up nicely that maybe they can pocket, 4 or 5 wins here before we get to the midpoint of October.
Yeah, the schedule is the only thing that really is kind of makes me reconsider the over. We could have a very strong start to the season, undefeated September, that type of thing before this team really gets tested. You miss some of the best teams in the conference for the most part. So I could see it, but I am standing firm on saying that this is a 6-6, maybe 5-7 type of team this year.
So once again, 6.5 is that win total, 22-1 for the odds to win the Big 12. All right, so let's take a trip to Boulder, Colorado. Deion Sanders enters year 3 as the coach of the Buffs, and this year's iteration is going to look drastically different from how this program's looked the past few years. Shedeur Sanders, Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter, all gone. So many moving pieces here, as usually is the case with a Deion Sanders team, but those big pillars in Colorado and Hunter and Sanders are now gone to the NFL. Win total for CU is sitting at 5.5. A little juicy to the over at -120 on DraftKings. Even money under +100 at pretty much every book. John, there's just so much new here, and I don't know what to expect from Deion and from this offense without his son at quarterback and without Travis Hunter being able to do everything on both sides of the ball. Are they going to all of a sudden try to become a running team? He might have the best offensive line he's had in Boulder since he got there. I don't know what we're going to see from Colorado this year. I really don't have a solid grasp on this program.
Yeah, the shape of the offense is going to be dictated, I think, by what they end up landing on at quarterback. Caden Salter, they bring in from Liberty. He's more of a true dual threat type of quarterback. So a bit different than what we saw with Shedeur, where Shedeur was a guy that could just sit back in the pocket and deliver to, they had 4 NFL caliber receivers in that room. It wasn't just Travis Hunter, LaJohntay West or Jimmy Horn, like you said, and Will Shepard were all strong contributors for that passing game. That gets completely changed over. So I think that you kind of are justified, and especially if you go ahead and make the move to bring in a guy like Caden Salter to at least give him the chance off the jump. But I see the leash being rather short for him. Because Juju Lewis is, he was a huge get for Colorado coming out of high school, one of the best quarterback recruits in this year's class. So let's take a look-see at the schedule here and kind of figure out what our line in the sand is for if Caden Salter is struggling when Julian Lewis could be in.
I wonder if we see him week 1. That Georgia Tech game, I love the Jackets in that spot. I even in Colorado, I really like Georgia Tech. We talked a lot about them in the ACC preview, how we're both pretty high on them this season. I think Colorado is going to start off 0-1. Then you take on Delaware, an FCS team. You go to Houston. This is a tougher schedule, I feel like, than people are letting on. I think I'd feel more comfortable playing the under there because there's just so much unknown, and I'm not really sure what this is going to look like for Deion here in year 3.
I think depending on how that BYU game goes and how Salter has performed to that point, I think Julian Lewis that would be the point at which he takes over for the rest of the season. So Salter, I think he has 4 games to show that he can be the guy that commands this offense and moves it in a different direction. It's just going to look so different what Colorado's offense relative to these last couple of years where they've just been chucking it and not really running the ball at all. They are totally justified in trying to run the ball this year. Like you said, you've got a great offensive line, and Dallin Hayden was a guy that I thought kind of looked like a stud at Ohio State, just really hasn't been used a ton just yet because Colorado just hasn't really seemed too interested in doing that, but they might have to be this year, and Hayden is someone to kind of keep in mind in that respect.
Well, last year too, and people out there listening, don't forget this, that entire offense that Pat Shurmur designed was specifically to showcase Shedeur Sanders. Right. To get him to the NFL too. That's not the case this year. And John, I do have one other question there about Lewis. I don't know how much you really know about him. Is he the kind of freshman that they're going to have packages for early on in the season? Maybe give him, a couple plays in there. But I mean, Salter is such a good runner that usually it'd be the other way around, where you have an older pocket presence guy, pocket passer, and then you bring in the young freshman that can run.
Exactly. So this isn't going to be it's not like Mertz and Lagway or something last year. Salter is that run game. So it's hard to throw the proverbial change up with a pocket passer within the flow of a game. So Julian Lewis, especially with that Georgia Tech game being the starter, being the beginning of the year, you don't really have the liberty to, for lack of a better word, to workshop it, and kind of test some things out. Maybe you can get away with that a little bit against Delaware, but I think for the most part, it's just going to be Salter's job until it's not.
All right, so that's going to be it really for our full in-depth team breakdowns here. We do have 4 other schools that if we have any thoughts on, John, we can touch on here. We got to talk about Oklahoma State, who drastically needs to rebound after a brutal year last year for Mike Gundy. Scott Frost has returned to UCF and to lead the Golden Knights there, the Knights rather, excuse me. Who else we got? We have to talk about Arizona, who had a brutal year last season, and then Rich Rodriguez is back at West Virginia too. So anything that you really want to touch on with these 4 teams?
Yes, so West Virginia to me is interesting because I do think that Rich Rod can still coach, and I think being back in Morgantown will kind of rejuvenate him further. I thought he did a good job at Jacksonville State, frankly, and I think that the type of offense that he ran there, it's pretty applicable to what we're going to see with the personnel at West Virginia. If they end up going with Nico Marchiol at quarterback, which I think is kind of the expectation, although there has been some quotes from Rich Rod saying, that they could mix in a whole bunch of different quarterbacks. So that scares me just a little bit. We'll have to see what the beginning of the season looks like for this West Virginia team. Can they do that? But Jaheim White, the running back, pretty impressive. They did lose Hudson Clement, their best receiver from a year ago, but I like the pairing of Rich Rod's offensive philosophy with what Nico can do, particularly as a runner, and that I think is going to make West Virginia maybe a little bit more dangerous than the books are suggesting right now. Beyond that, Arizona, we're going to need to see a rebound in a hurry. Fafita fell completely flat on his face last year. This was a team that, I think by late September, you're like, boy, this doesn't look remotely like we thought it was going to, does it? And it's, you have Fafita, you have T-Mac, and yet nothing is really working. They just look like they were going through the motions a lot of the time. So you got to get that apathy out of there if you're Arizona, and you got to do it in a hurry. So I'm a little bit concerned about Arizona. I just think that the rug pull of Fish leaving, I think, kind of results in the current coach. Was it Neil Brennan or something? I forget his name. I think this is just not going to work out for Arizona.
Brent Brennan. Yeah.
Neil Brennan, I think, is like a comedian.
That does sound right. That does sound familiar. Anyways, so I have said that Oklahoma State is my dark horse in the Big 12 this season, not to win the conference or really even make the championship game, but to just get back to respectability. And it's one of those things where I just have trust in Mike Gundy, and it's leave Mike Gundy for dead if you dare. I mean, tread lightly there. I mean, this was the first time in 19 seasons that he won less than 3 Big 12 games. They're going to swing back, I feel like, this season. Now, the question is how are they going to do that? Because, no one seems to really know much about this current roster he's got going on. He has brought in 2 new coordinators as well. It feels like Mike Gundy, fired up, Madden back in the day and just, did a fantasy draft and picked the guys that he wanted on his team, because he has completely overhauled this thing. So I don't have, a specific, player reason why I think the Cowboys are going to be much better this season. I just trust Mike Gundy to figure it out. You got a win total sitting at 4.5 here. It's juiced to -160, but Mike Gundy getting back to bowl eligibility at a plus number, I like that bet. I'd take that bet. So give me Oklahoma State to get back to like 6-6, 7-5.
And I think, part of the reason to feel good about it is look at the names in that quarterback room. You got Zane Flores, Hoss Haney, Banks Bowen. This is, that's a QB room that you can set your watch to. I don't know who's going to be the guy exactly. I think it's supposed to be Zane Flores, but regardless, the name value alone in that room mixed with the Gundy mullet magic, I think we're going to find our way to go bowling here with the Pokes. I like it.
All right, very good. Okay, so that's going to do it for our Big 12 preview. We are going to now head into week 0, which actually is just a continuation of the Big 12 because there's 3 Big 12 schools playing next Saturday, week 0. Let's start off with Farmageddon in Ireland. John, Iowa State, Kansas State. Shop around here with this number depending on who you want to back because you can find 3s out there. There are a couple of 3.5s as well. As I've mentioned before, I'm going to say this a ton. Trends are your friends until they are not. The underdog is 8-3 against the spread in the last 11 meetings in this matchup, so dating back to 2014. Ireland games, 2 guys, by the way. If you take out all the Notre Dame games, which is when they usually play Navy there, all of these games have been decided by a field goal or less since 2012. So that's 4-0 to that too. John, my thoughts quickly heading into this game, and then I'll let you take it away. I don't fully trust Kansas State to be like locked and loaded and ready to go and be a good product here in week 0. I have questions about the offensive line. I have questions about the quarterback. I have questions about the secondary. Where I don't have those questions about those 3 areas when it comes to Iowa State, I like taking the points here. Give me the 3.5 with the Cyclones.
I am with you there. I like the 3.5 where I can get it. I think that like you said, that is available at some shops. Other places have it at just 3. Last year, Avery Johnson, it was on the road in Ames, but 12 for 28 against Iowa State. But he did have 3 touchdowns. So that's just a weird kind of day from him. Effective when he did land his punches, but he didn't land them at a particularly high frequency. I just think that ultimately, this Iowa State team is going to be a little bit more ready to roll right off the jump. I know that playing in a neutral game across the pond is kind of a weird negating factor for both teams here, but the computers seem to like K-State just a little bit in this one. SP Plus has K-State 29, Iowa State 25 or so. I'm doing some rounding on the fly here, but I like the Clones plus 3.5 as well, and I might have to do some soul searching on Clones money line as well.
Yeah, plus 125 on FanDuel. Not a bad number. That could be a nice way to jumpstart your betting season and start building that bankroll as you head in to the college football season. A couple of other games. So we got 4 games in total, I believe, in week 0. We got this UNLV Idaho State game, which is the first game for Dan Mullen, who's back on the sidelines at UNLV. They are a huge favorite, the biggest one of the day at 25.5. We have Fresno State heading to Lawrence to take on Kansas. The Jayhawks, big favorites as they reopen and rechristen Memorial Stadium. And then we also have, of course, a nice Hawaii game too, I believe, late at night.
We do.
When they take on Stanford. Oh, so there's a 5th game too. Western Kentucky and Sam Houston State. Can't forget about them. Any other spots that you really want to hit on there when it comes to week 0?
I like the over in Kansas Fresno State. We're sitting at 50.5 right now. I think Kansas is going to get us 35 right off the rip, and I think Fresno State can answer for their own part. They've got E.J. Warner at quarterback, the son of Kurt Warner, who's been around the block a decent bit at Temple and at Rice, but he can sling it. We'll have to see what the new offense looks like at Fresno State. They brought in a coach from the FCS ranks. They might run it a little bit more than we're used to for a Fresno State team, but I think they have the personnel to pull that off. So I think we're going to see points aplenty. 50.5 rings a little bit low to me. The only concern there being like, this is week 0. These teams end up playing a little bit sloppy on both sides, and we end up seeing the lower scoring one. But that over to me is tempting if both these teams come correct, absolutely. And then Sam Houston, Western Kentucky. I'm just saying, don't write that off. That is a fun game. Western Kentucky's offense is going to be a lot of fun this year. It might not be as fun as the Bailey Zappi year, but I think that Maverick McIver, the new quarterback there, formerly of Texas Tech and Abilene Christian, they kind of did the same thing that they did with Bailey Zappi, where they brought in the offensive coordinator as well from Abilene Christian to kind of run the show there at Western Kentucky. So the Tops are going to be fun once again, and a lot of people are excited about what Hawaii's cooking this year. It feels like they might actually have a quarterback. Elahado is someone that is getting some buzz. So him versus a power team like Stanford, power, I guess in quotes, kind of being what it is. I mean, Hawaii's favored against Stanford for what it's worth, but interested to see if Hawaii can be taken somewhat seriously this year.
Yeah, so I'm also interested in that game too, and I haven't gone so far to place a bet or actually make a wager on this game, but I'm actually tempted to take the points with Stanford there, especially if that crosses a field goal. You got 2.5 on DraftKings right now. Hawaii's been horrible against Power 4 teams. I mean, that includes Stanford. So that's interesting there. I think the bet I like more though in that game, I think I like the over in that one at 52.5. I mean, just looking back through with Chang at coach and all that, anytime they play a Power 4 school, they can't stop a nosebleed. So I do think Stanford's going to be able to get theirs, and I don't think Stanford's defense is anything great either. So I think Hawaii will be able to put up points too. 52.5, I can easily see that game being like a 35-31 or even like 31-28, and we clear that by almost a touchdown.
Yeah, I think that point about Hawaii's defense is really, really important because people rightfully don't think much of this Stanford offense, but when the defense is soft as tissue paper, we're going to see some points from the Cardinal there.
Absolutely. The only problem I have with that game is that it's a 7:30 Eastern kick. We need that later. That's got to be late at night after the entire house has gone to bed. I want to be able to go sit on my couch and watch Hawaii after dark when it's still light out at it's whatever it is, 5 o'clock there, way out in Honolulu when it's pitch black at midnight here on the East Coast.
Yeah, no, it's kind of messed up. I'm going to be kind of thrown through for a loop next weekend. I'm going to be on the West Coast. I'm going to be in Seattle. So
okay.
Farmageddon kicks off at breakfast time for me next weekend. And yeah, I am a little salty that this Stanford Hawaii game will be 4:30 for me local time. I agree with you. It should be extremely dark where I am when Hawaii is kicking off.
All right, very good. That's going to do it for us, the Big 12, little Week 0 thought as well. We will be dropping some SEC previews this week too. John, we'll talk to you in a couple of days. This has been educational, I guess I will say here, because these teams, there's just so much about these Big 12 teams. Do your research, folks, before you really place any wagers on win totals if you haven't yet.
Do your research and then forget all of it because you know that this stuff is going to get turned on its head and fast.
And once again, you can find us on Twitter at CFB Tailgate 25. You can find us on YouTube or Spotify at College Football Tailgate, and also on TikTok at CFB Tailgate. If you really want to have a fun time, go check those pages out and hit that subscribe button or follow. It would mean the world. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.